There's no shock today. There was shock back then. You could say that and it would shock everybody that you actually said, I want to be a genuine American girl. Now, we are shock-proof. There's no such thing as shock rock. Yeah, because CNN is more shocking than anything that Marilyn Manson or Alice Cooper or anybody could do. I'd get my head cut off back then, and it was shocking. People wouldn't let their kids come to the show because of the guillotine. Now I turn on CNN and there's a guy really getting his head cut off, which shocks me because it's real. So now shock is just part of the show. And it's not really shocking. Audience want to see it. They want to see the guillotine. They'd feel really cheated if they didn't get to see the guillotine. You know, it's just traditional now. And we do it really well. I mean, it really does look real. And, but to shock an audience, yeah, almost impossible. You know, the only thing that would be shocking if somebody died on stage. That would be shocking. You know, it's just showbiz now. Phoenix or Detroit? When people say, I've been living in Phoenix for over 50 years, almost 60 years, and people say, where are you from? I say, Detroit. Because Detroit's the home of rock and roll. My DNA is Detroit. I'm a muscle car guy. You know, I'm a Detroit Tigers fan. My whole personality is Detroit, not Phoenix. Phoenix is a great resort to live in, but I'm not from there. I'm from the Motor City where hard rock is king. And I think that that's always been in my blood. I've never ever wanted to be a soft rock band, ever. To me, it was in the DNA to turn the guitars up and blow that place out, you know. So I will always be a Detroit rock band. Hard rock is the only music that has withstood every kind of change in rock and roll. Rock and roll started out as doo-wop. Hard rock didn't come in till the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. Beatles were hard rock compared to everything else. Then when the Stones came out and the Kinks and the Yardbirds, then it started getting to be this hard rock band, guitar-driven hard rock. And that music has gone through punk, hip-hop, new wave, every grunge, everything that rock and roll has done, hard rock stays right there and is at the forefront, where people still go to see Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses, Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, all the classic hard rock bands. That music will not die. You listen to You Really Got Me by the Kinks, it still works. Da-da, 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 da-da. If I was a 17-year-old kid, I go, what's that? That's cool. Compared to what's going on now, I think rock right now is anemic. Kids have forgotten how to be outlaws. If you're a rock and roll band, you're an outlaw. You're a pirate. You're not like everybody else. Now kids are very introverted. They kind of, you know, they sing about what's sensitive to them. Who cares? I want to hear about your girlfriend. I don't care about your politics. Jim Morrison or Iggy Pop, both. Two different worlds. Jim Morrison was this nihilistic poet that every woman was deadly in love with. I mean, it looked like the statue of David. And he was this dark poet, but he was high all the time. He would take pills the way that you would eat Skittles or the way you would eat M&Ms, and he would wash it down with Jack Daniels all day. And very nihilistic. But I got along with him. He'd get on stage and he was perfect. He'd get in the studio, he was perfect. But the other 22 hours was a process of killing himself and no way of talking him out of it. Iggy Pop, on the other hand, I grew up with Iggy in Detroit, and we did 1 million shows together, and he was pure punk, way before the Ramones, way before the Sex Pistols. Iggy Pop was the king of punk. You could not get more punk than Iggy. Here's a guy with no shirt on, just a pair of Levi's ripped up, and he had this body that was perfect, with peanut butter all over it, you know, and a switchblade cutting himself. Come on. And the music was just pure Detroit punk. You know, I'm loose. It was just rough, raw Detroit rock. Can't really compare the two. They were two different worlds, you know. You know, Vincent Fournier, my real name, was a great name. If I was a poet, Vincent Damon Fournier, that's a great name. Or if I was an artist, I'd be a great name. It's not as scary as Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper sounds like some little old lady that makes cookies for the kids on the block, except that there's something wrong with her. There's bodies buried in the basement somewhere. And I just thought it was such a great, wholesome name for this band that was not anything but wholesome. You know, it was a play on words, you know. What was more dangerous, Alice Cooper or Vincent Fournier? Well, Alice Cooper, you know. Why is this band called Alice Cooper? They're a bunch of guys. I know. It's scary.
But you and me ain't no movie stars. What we are is what we are.
A very odd thing happened in that we were hard rock, and then the disco plague hit rock and roll. Saturday Night Fever, everything on the radio was disco. So what happens with Kiss and Alice Cooper and Aerosmith and all the hard rock bands? We always had one ballad on every album. The only thing they would play during the disco plague was our ballads. And so I had 4 ballad hits in a row. And people started thinking that I was like softening up. It's just that the radio would not play hard rock. So I had Only Women Bleed, I Never Cry, You and Me, and How You Gonna See Me Now, right in a row, all top 20 hits. And I kept going, come on, play the rock and roll. But they wouldn't, because they had disco going, you know, like that. So all of us had to weather that storm, you know. And then when disco was over, hard rock was back again, you know. So yeah, I was a crooner though. In fact, Frank Sinatra did You and Me, but that was a big deal for me. Tina Turner did Only Women Bleed, you know. So I mean, a lot of my ballads got covered by some really pretty cool people.
Open it up, but don't you leave it, 'cause that's all I got to give to you.
Religion and rock and roll, you know, I was the prodigal son. My whole family was Christian. My dad was a pastor. My grandfather was an evangelist. I grew up in the church, and then went as far away as I could, and then came back. I got called back. It was here. It was, you need to be back here. And when I came back, I became Christian again. And I realized that being Christian is not what people usually think as Christian. It's a one-on-one relationship with Jesus Christ. There are things that you just naturally stay away from. I don't drink anymore. I don't take drugs anymore. I would never cheat on my wife. My kids are great. My kids are all in bands and everything like that, but they've never been into drugs. They've never been into any sexual problems. Now, do we go out on stage and act as crazy as possible? Yeah, because I think people think of Christians as all these right-wing, you know, anti-gay, anti-this, anti-this. We're not that. Jesus never came here and condemned. He didn't condemn anybody. In fact, he used to protect the prostitutes. He used to protect the drunks. So that's what you have to look at, is the way he lived. If I can be anywhere close to that, it's a pretty good life.
All the girls and boys.
But I'll still slit your throat on stage.
That's
Yeah, they're going to slit your throat.